Hello Miata people of the internet, Keith Tanner here from Flyin Miata, and today I'm going to talk about Flyin Miata's research and development methods, what we do, why we do it, and why we think it's important to us. So here at the Flyin Miata shop, we actually had a visitor last week. Rick Weldon from the Miata Reunion stopped by, and you're going to see some video from him and some announcements on what we're doing with the Miata Reunion, a special event that we're going to be sponsoring as part of that. Keep your eyes open for that one. I'm not sure when it will show up, but the Miata Reunion is a big, hundreds and hundreds of Miatas taking place at New Jersey Motorsports Park, October 22nd through 24th, I believe it is. Go to miatareunion.com. The track day is still open. There are still some spots available on that, and there's all sorts of other stuff going to be available for everybody who shows up. So definitely, if you're in the area, if you're looking for something cool to do, the weekend before Halloween, Miata Reunion, we'll be down there. We'll have some of these cars down there. We'll have some of our people down there, and we hope we see you there. So, that's not why you came here. Today you came to find out more about the R&D we do at Flyin Miata, why it is that we think this is important. And we do several different levels of R&D. We actually have 10% of our staff is devoted to research and development specifically, and we have a number of other people like myself who aren't specifically in the R&D department but still take part in testing and brainstorming ideas. Quite a few of us do that. We get a lot of input from our customer service reps in terms of what people are asking for, and of course they're all Miata people as well. A large number of our staff own their own Miatas and they run our parts, so we get our own feedback locally, internally, as well as from our customers as well. So there's several different types of R&D we do here. Probably the easiest one, the most, well, maybe not the most visible, but one of the easiest ones to understand is we curate a lot of stuff. We may not, for example, LEDs. We did not invent the LED. We're not even close. But we do offer LED lighting packages for pretty much all of these cars. And those are packages that our R&D guys, Kyle and Brandon, a lot of this was Kyle, went through, picked out the best quality LEDs we could find, packaged them together so that you had all of the ones that you need for an NA, an ND, an NC, an NB, whatever, so that you knew that when you bought one, you could simply put it in, it would work, it would be good quality stuff. We use US-made LEDs as much as possible. That's the sort of curation we do. So we'll often do that. You'll notice that we don't necessarily sell 18 different versions of a product of slight variations. We'll often sell just one or two because those are the ones that we think are the best on the market, and so those are the ones that we sell. And we test almost everything we sell. That's why we have a fleet of test cars. This is only a few of them parked here behind me. We have our own cars as well, and we have a few customers that we work with once in a while as well. We'll say, hey, can you try this spring set on the back of that suspension and let us know how it feels, run on the track, run on the day-to-day, so that we get feedback from different drivers, from different cars in different areas. So this curation, this testing is an important part. Even if we didn't develop the part here, we have tried it, and that allows us to support it better. That allows us to say, yes, this is something that we're willing to put our name and our reputation behind. We also will take existing products, such as the BBR turbo kit that's on this car. And we will, it's a very good piece of kit. We're very happy with it. But there were a few things that we needed to do to make it suitable for our usage. For example, in order to get the emissions approval that we have on that kit, we needed to include a catalytic converter. So we redesigned the downpipe to include a catalytic converter and came up with the jigs and things that we needed in order to put that together. We improved some of the intercooler piping, some of the various bits and pieces. So basically we took an existing product and then fine-tuned it. We do that fairly often. We have a lot of feedback on products, even if they weren't designed here originally. We have a lot of back and forth with the designers that allows us to have some say into how that's done. Another example on that is the Paco Motorsports Strong Arms. Mark at Paco did the majority of the design work on that, but we did a lot of test fitting. We gave a lot of feedback in terms of where holes should be, mounting, that sort of thing, and we developed the instructions for them as well. So there's a lot of working with manufacturers and designers on products like that. And of course, there is the ground up, never been done before, or the from scratch development, and that's the stuff, of course, that everyone knows: the Flyin Miata turbo kits, the suspension kits. We do a lot of that, and that's what takes up a lot of our R&D department's time, because it takes a lot of time to develop a product from scratch. And the one advantage this gives us is that we know the product inside out, and we have the ability to say, if this is not the best on the market, or if this is not the best option for the price, we can change it until we think it is. And that's not something you can do if you're just picking other people's parts out of a catalog. We use all sorts of, I got some of the stuff here, we use all sorts of cool tools to do this. We have our own 3D printers, of course. This is our coolant reroute kit that underwent a lot of R&D. We worked with the local university on flow through the Miata engine, testing all sorts of things. We tested it with turbos. We went through multiple iterations to make it fit, to make it work well. And this is the sort of thing that we do. We have dozens and dozens of 3D prints of these things as we continue to refine the design. And this is nothing new. This is the turbo outlet casting for our NA and MB turbo kits. This was 2006, I think. We had this 3D print made to make sure that the product actually fit. This allowed us to design the downpipe that went with it. We did a manifold, and of course, it eventually got turned into iron. So we've been using those sort of tools for a long time. We do a lot of digital design, and then we have to check things in the real world, so that's what this is for. We also make sure we keep stock parts on hand. This is off a 2017 RF, for example, as references. So we can go back and say, okay, how does this suspension kit, for example, work relative to the stock suspension on a 2017 RF GT? Or that's the club suspension version. You can see we've been testing different bump stops on this one. But we keep all of these parts around as reference. They're labeled so we know what they are, so we can go back, we can check fitment. We have Brembo brake kits for NDs. We have the stock brake kits for NDs. Also the stock bracing. There's a whole stash of parts behind me here that we keep on hand simply as a reference. And then we go to the design mode. This is an empty shock. There's nothing in here. It's got a 3D printed end on it. This is to make sure that we have the travel range right after a bunch of measurements before we go to the expense of milling this sort of thing and going to on-the-road testing. And then, of course, we build the actual thing and we test it. We bolt it on all the applicable cars. We test them on the street. We test them on the track. We sometimes send them to our friends so they can test them on their streets and their tracks. We have multiple drivers do them. We'll test them on our high horsepower cars. We'll test them on naturally aspirated cars. We try to get as many different ranges as possible, and then we fine tune the design to get that working as well as possible. And we rely a lot on, at least in suspension, on actual behavior, how it's actually working on the track, on the street, as opposed to simply doing calculations and throwing it out there and hoping it's good, because there's all sorts of edge cases you don't find otherwise. And we have a lot of experience in-house with Miata suspension design, with driving Miatas. Most of our guys have owned Miatas for 20 plus years, and so they're very familiar with the dynamics of them, so we want to make sure we keep that. Do we have any questions so far, guys? No questions? Okay. So that's what we do. I mean, that's what these cars do for a living. We've owned this Merlot M Edition since 1995. That poor car has been an R&D car for 27 years. It's been turbocharged, it's been supercharged, it's been naturally aspirated, all of those multiple times. We had to replace the primary wiring harness because we'd spliced into it so many times as we tried various things. It's run on multiple different fuels. It's had all sorts of brake kits on it. We even foamed remember foaming the chassis? We did that 2 years ago. But that poor thing was bought specifically to be an R&D mule. So was that ND, so was that NC, so was that MB, so was that ND. This one came to us, we inherited that one, and we use it as a show car. But we do this, we make sure that we have these cars, and they exist specifically to be tested. This one, for example, this is Roller Girl. This car is only used as a test bed for parts. There's stuff on there we can't show you right now, but it is used basically, it's a hammer. We just put it out there and we just keep beating on it and finding out what works, what doesn't work. It's not pretty, but it's reliable and it's a good base for testing. So we try to have one of those for every generation. So I'm going to hit some of the questions. Do we have any questions there, Travis?
I don't see any, but sorry for the scroll through.
Okay. This has been an important part of our DNA for a long time. Like I said, this is a 2006 turbo kit, and that was nowhere near the beginning. We have been doing our own R&D since pretty much the beginning of Flyin Miata. Flyin Miata got its start effectively when Bill Cardell took his brand new 1990, slapped a turbo kit on it, and it was terrible. The fuel pressure was, the extra fuel was added by closing off the return line from the fuel pressure regulator with a Hobb switch whenever it went in a boost. Kids don't do this at home, but Bill was able to make it work. He was able to sort out the problems, and because of that, the manufacturer started sending all the people who bought that turbo kit to Bill to fine-tune that, and that's more or less how we got going. So R&D and product improvement has been in our DNA since the beginning, and it's still a big part of it. If you're only paying attention to one chassis, to the NAs, the NCs, the NDs, you might not see a lot of this because we're developing for 4 different cars at once. But trust me, we're here working constantly on trying to improve, trying to bring new products to market, trying to fine-tune the other products we have. It's constant development. Do we have a question there, Travis?
Someone was asking about updates on your race dash.
Updates on the race dash. I'll get to that in a moment. I'll talk on a couple of the things that people have had questions about. But yeah, and all these cars have names because it's so much easier to refer to Roller Girl than it is to the 2002 NB or to Andy, instead of referring to the turbocharged 2016 or Pokey, because, well, it's always been Pokey. So we give them all names simply because, 1, it's fun, and 2, it just makes it easier to refer to them all. And there's a bunch missing. I mean, we do have access to more cars. You've seen a number of them in the various car tours and things we have. So here's some of the questions that people have sent us, some of the questions that they've had about things. What new products are currently being worked on? We generally don't talk about future product because the nature of R&D is we cannot guarantee a time frame. We cannot say we will have this product available on such and such a date, or that development will be finished on such and such a date. And so we've learned the hard way over the years that we generally don't talk about upcoming products because it just, people's impressions from internet development speeds, real world development speeds are considerably slower. And you know, we're not going to have something to market 3 weeks after you hear about it on the internet. So that's why we don't talk about it. We have been talking about the race dash, the analog race dash. And that is still, when we first announced it, I think we said it was probably going to be about 6 months. That was 2 months ago. We have no reason to believe that that is any different. There is certainly progress going on there. We've been talking about a bunch of different things in terms of layout, in terms of capabilities, in terms of, you know, the open source aspect of it. I've been playing around with my own personal one and doing all sorts of interesting things. It now automatically senses what steering wheel you've put on the car and changes from race mode to street mode and vice versa. I've been having some fun with that. But yes, that product is still very much in development. As soon as we have something cool to show you, we'll show you. I might do another update on that if there's interest in it. My own personal version of it is diverging a little bit. We do have a master list of products we want to work on. We prioritize them depending on how important they are, how high effort they are, the amount of return we expect out of them. So they all get scaled around that. You know, a very high effort product that has very low return obviously is not going to be the same priority for us as a low effort product that has a very high level of return or is in very high demand. Something unique, for example, is going to be higher priority than something which is just the same as everything else. But we do actually have a master plan for how we develop things. Personal enthusiasms can also bring interesting products to market as well. The wings that I developed for the NA and NB years ago, those wing mounts, that was a personal project. The race dash was a personal project that kind of got out of control. So there's a little bit of that, but mostly there is a master plan. We do have a big whiteboard up there that shows us what we're working on, status, what comes next. Kyle's waving his hand around up there. We have a question.
Someone's asking what percentage, roughly, of the products Flyin Miata sells is developed in-house?
Okay, the question is what percentage of the products that Flyin Miata sells is developed in-house? And it's somewhere around 25% last time I checked. It's surprisingly high. And that also includes products that are, we're counting effectively the BBR Turbo Kit as one of those because we did have input. You can't get that version of the kit anywhere else. We did have input into its design. In terms of stuff designed from the ground up, I haven't run those numbers. That's a hard one to pull up. We'd have to run through each one of them piece by piece. But you know, pretty much all of our bracing products are ours, except for that frog arm or the strong arm I mentioned earlier. Our suspension kits, very, very high level of involvement in the suspension kits, our brake kits as well. Very, very high level of involvement in those. Even if, for example, we start with a Willwood front kit, we have our own rear kit, we add our own parts with the proportioning, etc. A lot of electronic stuff is our own, is exclusive to us. It's our own development. So yeah, fairly high percentage. I mean, there is some stuff that is a commodity because people are always looking for the same things, but we try to get as much as possible to be unique to us as possible because that gives us the ability, like I said, to, if this is not the best for this niche on the market, let's change it until it is. And that can be make it less expensive, that can be make it higher quality, that can be make it fit better, that can make it perform better. There's a bunch of different things you're always trying to improve. One of the questions is, what is the coolest new thing you have been working on? In my opinion, that's the race dash. Because, I mean, that's what I go home and work on at night. I can't talk about some of the things we're working on. I'm quite excited about some of the products we have coming down the pipe. Some of them will be a bit of a surprise because there's something you might not think we need to add to our product line. And there's been a few that haven't worked out. I was working on a custom big brake kit for my own car that I don't think it's really going to work out simply because wheel fitment, cost, it's going to be a little exorbitant, so, and supply issues. So there's a few that don't make it, but yeah, generally speaking, the coolest new thing to me is the race dash. One question is, to what level do you guys test products, like New England weather versus California weather? Now note that we do not have access to either of those specifically. We have Colorado weather, but that does mean we have high desert, we have mountains, we have snow, we have quite a range of climate available to us. A lot of that sort of testing is done with, if we have something that needs to be tested in a certain environment, we will send it to our friends. We have friends in California we can send parts to. We have friends out east we can send parts to. We also work with manufacturers who know what they're doing. Now, for example, Fox Racing, they know how to build stuff that deals with dirt, that deals with climate. This Kashima coat that's on there, you see it on motorcycles, you see it on mountain bikes. These guys know how to build factory shocks for the Raptor, and of course UTVs and stuff like this. So we went with them knowing very well that they knew how to build a seal that would survive a lot of exposure to the elements, unlike some of our previous suspension offerings, unfortunately. So some of that we test as best we can. We are not the size of Ford or GM who can put millions of miles on production on prototype cars. But I think we do pretty well for being a small shop in Colorado. What is more important for this position, experience in the industry or a college degree? Sounds like someone's looking for a job. That's an interesting question. I'd say probably experience is more important to us than a college degree. You'd be surprised at some of the degrees that people at Flyin Miata actually have. Not everyone at Flyin Miata has a degree, but coming to Flyin Miata, the ability to understand what we do and the ability to communicate what we do, even if you don't have experience specifically, that's always important to us, especially if you're doing something customer facing. Our customer service team, the important thing for them is they're able to troubleshoot, they're able to clearly communicate. We'll teach them Miata specific stuff if we have to, but they need to be able to solve people's problems over the phone. R&D, you obviously need to have an engineering style mind. You don't necessarily need to have a degree, although Kyle, you recently got yours, I believe. Yeah, Kyle recently got his engineering degree while working for us, which is a lot of long days. Brandon, of course, he's got an engineering certification. I have absolutely no engineering certification, but I like to hang out and play with these guys anyway, and that one is just sheer experience and bloody-mindedness. So I would say that some sort of proven design ability is probably the most important thing. There's a lot of cottage industries out there, a lot of guys designing their own parts. I was talking to a guy in Australia who's designing his own master cylinder braces. I'm helping him out by checking them on left-hand drive cars. This is a guy, it's not a big design shop, it's a guy who's come up with a couple of different cool designs. That's how Paco Motorsport started. There's a lot of really interesting stuff comes out of people who are interested in solving one problem that they have and then sharing that with the rest of the world. Have we found any fun or noteworthy Easter eggs from Mazda along the way? Kyle, can you think of any? Because you're the one who's like waist deep in these cars all the time. You can honk the horn in an NA8 using the diagnostic connector. You may not have known that, but yes. Why? I don't know. But yeah, put a paper clip in the right place, you can honk the horn, which I'm tempted to put that instruction somewhere just to scare a bunch of people. It could be fun. So there we go. I'm sure there are some Easter eggs we've come across, although I can't think of any offhand. It's not like Jeep where they put little pictures of Jeeps everywhere because, I mean, it's the only engineering they do. But Mazda, I don't think we've found anything really cute hiding away. So some of the off-topic questions we have, and these are about future products. Well, here one of them is: have we considered another run at the Targa Newfoundland as a chance to field test some of the new products? And one of the things we do when we do competition, we try to choose competitions with very, very open rule sets. We ran the Open Track Challenge back in 2002, 2003, specifically because it was open in terms of what we could do. And out of that came the FM4 turbo system. It came our stroker kit. There was a bunch of engine management stuff figured out. Some suspension stuff came out of that. Brake stuff came out of that. All sorts of things came out of that because specifically we were allowed to mess with stuff. If we were at Spec Miata, we would end up being very good at Spec Miata, but it wouldn't allow us to develop new products. I mean, developing a great race track suspension does you no good when you're told you have to run this suspension. So we would learn how to fine tune it, but we wouldn't be able to develop new products. So that's why we always choose very, very open race classes. Running SEC autocross every weekend in a very constrained race class is great for improving yourself as a driver, great for competition, not so great for product development. So we don't concentrate on that sort of thing. Would we do another Targa run? The Targa was great for us because of that completely wide open rule set, but it's also a very difficult, expensive race to run. It's 2,000 miles or 4,000 miles to get to the start line from here. Never mind the fact that it's a week long and all the prep work. So I don't know if we're going to be going back to the Targa. No plans on doing that at the moment, simply because of the sheer amount of commitment involved in doing it, unfortunately. How much further do we think the NA platform can be upgraded, or is it already at its limits of what we can change to make a difference without full-on customization of the chassis? Woof. I guess this question is, how much further can we push it? I mean, other than my 500 horsepower Miata that I've got sitting in my garage at home that, last time I was at the track playing around, the only people I could play with was a 911 with an LS7 in the back. It's still got a long way to go individually. I mean, a lot of these cars can still develop. We'll still continue to develop parts. Things will improve. I mean, what we thought was state-of-the-art 20 years ago when that was a mature platform looks almost laughable today. So I think we're going to keep seeing a lot of development on that chassis. Kyle and I, before we went on camera today, were talking about some very interesting powertrain opportunities that may be coming up for these cars. So, I mean, there's also things we can do. Can you get a 1,000 horsepower Miata? I don't think you want a 1,000 horsepower Miata. I mean, the wheelbase is 91 inches, I think, on an NA. So, eek, 89, I forget what it is. Yeah, there's a limit to how far maybe it should be pushed. There's still a lot of development being done for that chassis. We still do a lot of work on it. The NB, of course, being so closely related, the two of them get a lot of work together. And so I don't think we're going to see any massive step changes in its capability, but I think it's going to continue to evolve and get faster and faster and stiffer and more comfortable, and we're going to keep working with the raw material we have. And we have one very specific question. Is there a Stage 2 ND turbo system in the works? Because of our emphasis on emissions legal products, that one is not a very high priority right now. We have some other forced induction things we want to work on first. The amount of things we would have to do to make the platform support a Stage 2 ND in what we consider to be a safe manner for the engine, for the engine management. That one I don't see happening anytime soon. We do have some other forced induction stuff that we are working on. They're big projects, so it takes a long time to work through, but we have high hopes for some of those. Do we have any questions going on over there, Kyle?
Yeah, we actually have quite a list.
Uh-oh, quite a list of questions.
I might filter these a little bit because some of these might be a little off topic in terms of R&D.
Yeah, in terms of the questions, we're trying to avoid talking about, when are we going to come out with X and X and X. I want to talk about the actual, why we do it, what it is that we do. So,
I might hit a couple specifics. The first one here, plans on steering upgrades for the ND.
One of the questions is, are there plans for steering upgrades on the ND? I can tell you that there is a rack on my bench at home, surrounded by a bunch of electronics right now. That's all I'm going to say about that. My poor wife.
Let's see here. terms of the R&D process, how do we assess an interest in a particular project? Do we have a small group of insiders?
Okay, the question, that's a good question actually. The question is, how do we assess interest in a particular product before we go live with it? And it really depends on the product. Sometimes it's a matter of watching the community, watching what people are interested in, watching people working on. Sometimes it's a matter of something new opening up to us, a new piece of technology coming on the market, or a new capability on the part of our manufacturers. For example, the Hush-O-Matic ND exhaust system came out of our exhaust manufacturer saying, hey, we have this capability. And then we used some of the stuff we'd learned doing the ND V8s and tied those together and came up with the Hush-O-Matic with the CAN control and everything like that. So sometimes it's a matter of just we now have the ability to do this and there's nothing else around that can do it, so let's give it a try. We actually did try a sort of focus group for a while there. We called it the test pilot program. This was a long time ago. This was, I think, 2006. It didn't work out as well as we'd hoped. I don't think we got enough important information out of it. So mostly what we do is people come to us with ideas. Our customer service guys are talking to people all the time. We might have 10% of our workforce is dedicated to R&D, but at least 20% is dedicated to customer service. And so they are talking to people all the time. And so that is basically our focus group, is the people we talk to, people asking questions, is such available, is this available? And we also look historically as to what has worked well for us. Certain platforms, the market responds much more strongly to than others. We see that if we put a product out there and there's a strong response to it, we'll start doing more products along those lines. Bracing, people love bracing, so we have a good line of bracing products. The LED lights that we've been selling have been the market has responded very strongly to those, so that's why I've been bringing more of those online and more ways to introduce daytime running lights, for example, on the early cars. Actually, most Miatas, daytime running light kits, stuff like that. And that comes out of basically seeing the response to products that are out there. So I hope that if someone's hoping to get on the secret insider list of deciding what Flyin Miata is going to work on next, I'm afraid that there is no secret insider list at this point. Do we have another question there?
That's all that are truly R&D focused. The rest are kind of, we want this, we want that.
Okay. If you do have questions about we want this, and we do like hearing from people, as long as it's not something that, as long as it's something that we think might sell more than one of, because we are a business. We do have to pay the bills in order to be around next year and the year after that. Yeah, throw them in the comments. We will answer certain very specific questions. We'll try to answer them in the comments, both on Facebook, and if you're watching this in the future on YouTube, we'll answer them there as well. But generally speaking, the purpose of this video is to let you know sort of our purpose and how important R&D is to us, into our DNA, into who Flyin Miata is. It's certainly something we've done for a long time. It's something we're not going to stop. We actually had to check to make sure there was nothing you couldn't see in the background before we shot this video. We haven't been moving around very much, you might notice. There's always some good stuff coming down the pike. So, thanks for your attention, folks. My name's Keith Tanner from Flyin Miata, and we will see you again soon.